Hello, everybody. This is Amir Alwani from potentnews.com. Today, I am joined by Masaki Miyagawa from acquainted.com. This is a man who has had a lot of experiences, and he has gained a lot of wisdom. And definitely, I've learned a lot from talking with him. So, I'd like to give him an opportunity today to share some of what he's learned and what he does and what he's all about. And it's a lot of different areas that you look at, and I mean that's I do appreciate that as well. But yeah, if you want to go ahead, let the audience know a little bit about yourself and your background.
Okay, so my name's Masaki Miyagawa. Obviously, very Japanese name. But my family's been in Los Angeles about, I would say about 90 years, My mom's side's Buddhist priest for 400 years. So obviously I had an unusual upbringing from that. It's a very different influence, even from people that are, Japanese nationals, right? That had a very interesting influence. I grew up basically in a Buddhist temple. Also grew up in Hollywood, right? Los Angeles, all about media, movies, entertainment industry. So I know quite a bit about that, and DJ'd, hung around the drum bass, so-called jungle music scene here in LA for over 15 years. So know a lot about the underground music scene. And I've been going between Los Angeles and Sao Paulo, Brazil for about 10 years. So I saw a lot of things in Brazil. And I had to do a lot of healing myself because, I do a lot of energy work. I teach classes, which can also involve, so-called clairvoyant work, right? And if you can do energy healing, you can do clairvoyant work, period. And I do numerology classes. I do a lot of esoteric or metaphysical things. But this all came out of healing myself. And so it's not like I set out to do this, but I had to go this way to heal myself, right? So after, I think it was like maybe 8 years every day, just only thinking about these things, right? I gained a lot of knowledge. So this is partly just what you would call like book learning, but it's also experience working with people, because I was not just healing myself, but now I do consultations with people, like numerology readings and so forth. So just seeing the patterns in people, and when you work with people with problems, you see the problem, you see the mirror in yourself. Right, so like with the human condition and so forth. So that's that's basically a short explanation. Came from an esoteric family, religious family. I had problems of my own, and through that, working through the years, the mainstream medical hospital couldn't help me. It was a spiritual, so-called problem, or energetic problem, and that's how I got to where I am today.
That's excellent. So, I mean, that relates to this Nikola Tesla quote. I'm just going to read. I'm not sure if someone brought this up in an interview, one of your other interviews recently, but essentially he said that the day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in one decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence. To understand the true nature of the universe, one must think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration.
Right.
So, I mean, one of the things that got me interested in what you do was the numerology service. And you had described to me how because I was already interested in astrology, and you had described how astrology and numerology and tarot, I think, were all part of like a thing.
Okay, well, I do numerology readings, and this is just one way to basically peel back the surface and see what's going on in deeper layers. And you can consider it a personality test, right? And there's many ways to do a reading. A lot of people know about astrology, and that basically works, as the metaphysical saying, as above, so below. So sometimes it's difficult to open up a person and see what's inside, but it's the macro and the micro, right? So as the stars move, actually that's happening in yourself, right? So it's a proxy to see what's happening inside, right? Tarot cards, right? These are archetypal symbols. They're like hyperdimensional symbols. Like, how can someone use a deck, ask a question, and the cards come out and tell a story? Because there's some sort of quantum or a magnetic attraction, and it just happens, okay? Some people can just do totally abstract clairvoyant or so-called psychic reading, right? Well, you're actually reading the energy of the person, right? Because this is all frequency. It's all energy, like Tesla said, right? Numbers is another way. And I like doing numbers because I am very esoteric, but I'm also grounded in the more mundane physical world, right? It's like, okay, let's get this information. Let's see what's going on with the person, see their personality, but then let's apply it. And numbers it's a very logical way, right? So it's just one way to do it, but especially for a lot of people that are not esoteric, it's a lot more concrete, I think. With some people that in the new age they might find boring, right? But I consider it very clear, right? Because there's no argument what a number is. Number one's number one. Number two's number two, and it's just known that various archetypes or personality types are connected with each number. And I can basically take a person's birthday and their birth name, right? But we can both agree how I calculated a number. There's no tricks involved. It's just math. It's just, addition. 1 + 1 = 2. We can agree how I came to it. And then this is the number and this is the archetype. And based on the position, there's like 5 basic levels. This is the outer personality. This is the inner personality. This is the direction of the person's life is going. But it's very interesting because basically I could talk for over an hour just based on the birth name and the birth date, right? And that's because somehow that personal information, it's encoded. It's like a holographic piece of you, right? It's kind of similar to the astrology. The day you were born, it's like where the stars were, that's actually represented in you, right? But we're using the proxy of the outer world to see the inner world, right? Now, as far as numbers in your birthday, that's clear. The day you were born, that's made in numbers, right? But the name is made of alphabetic letters, right? Well, we know in music, it's a musical scale, right? It's its frequency, its tone. So the alphabetic letters, it's very similar. A, B, C, D, we can assign a number and say it's 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then based on how you combine them, the full name, or we just take the vowels, we just take the consonants, that gives you different layers of the personality. So it's very logical, and I would consider it even a more limited set than astrology, because with astrology you have so many planets, you have so many aspects, right? Numerology it's a smaller set, but even given that, I can talk for over an hour. And it gives more than enough for people to, get started on, because how they act in the work life or career, it's the same as how they act in a relationship, right? And we're kind of like cartoons, so every strength, by the fact that it's strong in one direction, it's naturally weak in the other direction. There's no good or bad numbers, but, as the Greek said, right? Know thyself. So the best reading is one that doesn't surprise a person. They say, "Oh, you know what? That sounds like me," right? But most people are not that self-aware. They've never thought about it. But just in the fact of thinking about it and knowing, okay, I'm naturally this way, right? You already start to balance out. So the key is to balance out your personality, or so-called master yourself, right? Master your aspects. Then you can ride more on the positive traits than being held down by the negative traits. So.
Yeah, and for the audience who's listening, I mean, for what it's worth, Masaki had given me a numerology report, and I found it to be highly accurate. And he had walked me through it as well, and did the forecast and everything. And I had that.
It's kind of trippy, right?
Well, I mean, like you said, I already sort of experienced the same thing with astrology, but it's just really neat to see it in other areas as well. And I mean, it had a breakdown for the month and as every single day for that next year as well.
Right. Well, let me talk a little bit about that. So what Amir's talking about is when I do reading, it's not just your personality aspects, but from the day you're born, kind of a biorhythm starts. So it's like the seasons. It goes through a cycle, right? And that holds true for the years, the months, and even down to the day. So, I don't live my life by what number day it is, but a lot of times I'll pay attention to what month and definitely the year, because based on that, you can, it tells you about where you are in the cycle. And there's certain months that, I've seen it myself where, if you're doing the right thing, it's going to be the best financial month of the year, or maybe the best financial year in basically a decade-long cycle. And it helps to know that, right? I mean, mentally, I've been doing this long enough now that I'm like, okay, yeah, this is probably going to be a good month. But, even I'm surprised when I'm like, whoa, my cash flow, it really went up. And I was like, and that was the exact month it should have happened. So,
Wow. So I mean, at this juncture, let's get into one of the other things that you do. You make orgonite.
Right.
And if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about what orgonite is, I mean, if this isn't too tangential, but
no, it's all connected. Yeah. So basically, this was another thing. It just kind of, a lot of the things I've done, it's like somehow I had no idea in the world I was gonna do. And then all of a sudden, I'm known as the pyramid guy, right? Or I'm known as a numbers guy, and it's like, yeah, it's interesting how that happens. But basically, I've been making these pyramids here. It's made of a composite material. I have a black one here, okay. And right now, I'm calling these orgone pyramids because there's some trademark controversy going on with the orgonite name, right? But basically, these pyramids you'll probably see at holistic shows or people that are into energy work. And it's a very simple combination of plastic resin, metal particles, typically metal shavings, and quartz crystal. And it sounds crazy, but this combination of materials, especially cast into a pyramid shape, the pyramid shape has an energy all of its own. But cast into this shape, it will basically create a high energy field. Going back to Tesla, it's Tesla energy. It's a 0 point, and it helps you sleep better, and it keeps the electromagnetic pollution off of you. So, especially today, we have the cell phones, we have the Wi-Fi, which is like a mini cell phone tower in your house. We have the smart meters, which are the digital electrical meters on the houses and apartments, and those can be between 100 and 160 cell phone equivalent of electronic pollution. And you have to think, it's not just your house. It's the neighbor's house. It's all the people on your block. And if you're in an apartment building, I mean, they can have like 40 of those smart meters all in a row. And if you're anywhere close to that, you're really being hammered. So this is
hold on.
something.
You said
Yeah.
40 in a row?
Oh, I've seen it.
You've seen it?
If you are in an apartment block, it's not uncommon that they'll all have the meters in one area of the building. So if you're in a unit that's close to there, you're really getting fried, because okay, say there's only 10 meters, right, in a row, and it's 160 cell phones, so you're getting hit by 1,600 cell phone signals 24/7. Okay,
Massive.
and people wonder why they feel so irritable and not getting enough sleep, So, but there is a so-called spiritual or energetic law. For every move, there's a counter move. So you just have to understand the energy, and if you understand that this is something that's anti-biological that you don't want to be around, or you basically want to get out of your space, there's various energy tools, and the orgone pyramids are one of them. So it's also a really great entryway into energy work and understanding, the so-called quantum, scalar. There's many names: the Tesla energy, the 0 point, because all energy tools are working with the same energy. It's just different ways to achieve that. So you might see pendants that are, scalar pendants. You'll see the pyramids. Some people are into crystals, and the crystals are known to have monoatomic elements that have this energy also. So, all energy tools, which can be tested with the holistic muscle testing, right? Or some people use pendulum dowsing. You can test the energy, and that's scientific method, right? Somebody gets one. Talk to me in a few days. They say, hey, I'm getting better sleep. We can do a muscle test, right? Which a lot of scientists would frown on, but holistic practitioners have been using it a long time. And this is how I've rated and tested my own pyramids, because I know what materials lend themselves to making a better pyramid. So that's scientific method, not scientism, which is fake science religion, right?
Well, it's also interesting that you mentioned. I'm sort of fast forwarding a bit here, but you have a very interesting story about a powered pyramid that you have, whereby you ended up getting more or less instructions or sort of a recipe in your dreams about how to make whatever you were making there. Go ahead if you want to expand on that.
Oh, okay, so like I was saying, I'll hold this one up again, and it's a little hard to see because this is a black one, but this I would consider a passive energy device, right? Because there's no electrical input. It's just basically a sculpture made of these materials, which again, it sounds crazy, right? Because someone else might consider this like, how's that going to work? But you know what? Just understanding simple things about geometry, the pyramid shape, and the materials used, it creates a powerful healing effect, right? But this is a passive device. Now, when I have been working with the pyramids, for over a year, I think, I said, what else can I do? And making a powered pyramid is one of the things you can do. And basically, it's a way to create it's like you need a frequency generator and have to use a coil, right? It's a coil. How do I say? It's like a helix shape. I don't want to get too much into it. Basically, it's a wire. You twist it into a coil, and that's connected to a frequency generator, and then it's cast into a pyramid. But just using it's not that big, right? This pyramid, just using something like this, about this size, with a 9-volt battery, can create a strong effect. So, I was testing the limits of, what you could do with this. And basically over a period of days, I got more ideas in less than a week than in about 6 months to my thinking, right? Because you get pushed so high into another frequency band, and this frequency is actually consciousness, right? Because the consciousness wave or the consciousness energy is exactly the same as the scalar wave or this pyramid energy or the orgone energy, right? So it's like over a period of days, my frequency was being ramped up so high, it's like I could just pull stuff in. So this is not just like it is coming in immediately, but I was doing research on the internet, right, about pyramid stuff, and then I was going so deep, so far about all the things connected to the materials, the concepts. It took me a good couple of weeks just to process everything I had gotten in less than a week. And then also the dreams became very vivid. So and then I'm not one to really, we all have dreams, but I'm not one to really say I got a message in a dream, right? But it did happen. I got a very vivid dream, and it was based on basically what was happening in the dream, and I had the pyramids with me, and there's certain preset frequencies that you can use with the pyramids. So based on that, it was basically through the story of the dream, use this shape, not use this Giza pyramid, not the higher slope Nubian, or vice versa, and use this frequency. So it was basically told to me in that way, which pyramid would do what, right? That's basically getting information, right? And then when I woke up, usually, you know how you wake up and you'll forget what the dream was within, maybe a few seconds. Sometimes it's like a minute. I had dream recall for at least a half hour, which is kind of unusual, right?
Definitely.
So, basically, what you can use a power pyramid for, it's like a higher order of the regular pyramid, but one doesn't replace the other, because I would not run a power pyramid 24/7. You would do it like a few hours for like meditation, brainstorming, getting more ideas, or you could use it for a dream session like overnight, right? But the passive, the regular pyramids are great too, because you could just leave them sitting in your space. It's going to have an effect. But when you want that boost, like you're Mad Max and you have the nitrous, you need that extra boost. Power pyramid. It's like basically, what can you do with this class of energy tools? What can you do? And I hit that point where I said, well, I've done, pretty much everything I could do at that point. So let's take it to the next level. Made a power pyramid, and there's a lot of information online, but there's not a lot of so-called trip reports. So I put it to the test, right? Because I'm making them, I'm either gifting them or people are buying them from me. So I have to know everything about the pyramids. I have to know everything about the effects, and how to give advice to people, how to use them, right? So that's why I did it, and it was interesting,
Now you've interviewed the guy from Organize Africa. I forget his name.
George Rischel.
George Rischel, and he mentioned that water was showing up in rivers that had dried up once Organite was introduced to the environment. Is that true?
Okay, so basically, I think I should explain a little bit about the terminology, right? So we have this material, although I'm calling mine orgone pyramids because, again, there's like some copyright or trademark controversy, but it's been called Organite. So the word comes from orgone, right? So that goes back to Wilhelm Reich, who was a scientist and I think psychoanalyst. He was within Freud circles. He was an Austrian, and he was pretty active in like the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And he came up with this idea of an animating life energy, this invisible energy that runs through all organic systems, but also the environment, right? And it's very similar to the idea of Chinese medicine. You want a nice, healthy flow, but if there's a blockage, there's going to be a problem. Or if there's a stagnation, right? Just like when we have the chemtrails and all these frequencies, that could lead to a flat gray sky. Okay, so it's very similar to the idea of Chinese medicine. But, all cultures actually had this idea. The Indians, they had this concept of prana, the Vedic system, right? Prana. Chinese say chi, right? Chinese medicine, chi. Japanese say ki. It's basically chi. Chi, ki. Polynesians, mana. It's energy, right? Actually, the Europeans had it also. The Nordics had it also. But in the West, in the Enlightenment era, which is kind of a mind trip because they're telling you we're going higher, right? We're in the Enlightenment era, but they dropped out all this metaphysical stuff. And they went totally Cartesian, right? And Cartesian is basically 3D. If you can touch it, feel it, measure it, it exists. If you cannot see it, if you cannot measure it, it does not exist. Well, energy is kind of amorphous, and if you don't have the measuring devices to even perceive it, you may think it doesn't exist, but that's just your own limitation, right? Even our human eye, we can only see the visible light. So does that mean the infrared and all these spectrum bands do not exist? But that's a trick they play, because all this information of knowledge as far as like the numerology, right? The metaphysical was hidden for the secret society or the brotherhoods. And they just present it in public. Oh, we're scientists, we're educated now. We're at a higher level. Well, if you have what you call the sacred masculine, which is the logic, with the Cartesian, and the sacred feminine, which is the intuitive, the clairvoyant, the spiritual, that's two halves of a whole, right? So if you only present one to the public and you keep the other in your pocket, you have a tremendous amount of power over everybody else. But I just mentioned this because basically the West had this also, but it had been dropped out, and it was Wilhelm Reich that brought it back into the Western world in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. And he basically coined this term orgone, which later was used to describe this material that's used in the pyramids.
And he, it seems he suffered sort of the same fate as Tesla as well. In the end, I think he died in a jail. I'm not sure if Tesla died in a jail, but Reich died of a heart condition, I think, in jail after one of what some people note is one of the biggest cases of censorship in U.S. history, where the FDA, I think, went around and forced him to destroy his orgone accumulator boxes.
Well, he was definitely persecuted. So, okay, first of all, he was Jewish, right? So he was in Europe during the time the Nazis, rose up, and Germany basically took over Austria. So he moved to some Scandinavian country, and then later he moved to the U.S. So he's not just persecuted by the Nazis, but then as soon as he came to the U.S. and he started doing his experiments here, he got put on a blacklist of the FDA. So anything that said Wilhelm Reich or orgone was deemed to be burned, which is, that doesn't happen to everybody, right? So obviously there was something he was working with that was the system didn't like. Now, the word orgone comes from orgasm, right? So that could have been one reason. You're talking about like the 1950s. It's a very strict, sexually repressed culture. And there's a lot of argument about, this might have been a subversion, this whole free sex and openness, that maybe they were trying to debase the culture. But aside from that, there's a lot that Reich talked about that is true. So that's one thing. The whole root of the word going to orgasm, I think that made a lot of Americans uncomfortable. Okay. The other thing too, this whole topic of the orgone or the chi or the scalar wave, the 0 point, is such a fundamental part of reality that if you have an understanding of this, you start tapping into the source. It's called the source field, right? So that would be another reason why they wouldn't want people to go in this direction. Because, it's interesting. This kind of energy, the so-called scalar wave, the Russians call torsion field. It's a high spin vortex energy, right? Or the orgone, is not recognized by mainstream science. But it definitely exists. And basically, this source field, it's a precursor wave to the standard electromagnetic energy that's running in your house. So it's actually it's a stronger energy field. It's a precursor wave. So if you can tap into that, you can understand paranormal activity, psychic, because it is actually scientific. It can be explained now, because the source field, it is exactly the same as the consciousness wave. Okay, so you can do all kinds of things. Tesla experiments. You can use it for healing. All kinds of stuff. So it's basically it's such a fundamental block of reality that's been hidden. So it's like if you're trying to solve problems in the world, if you're unaware of this, you're at a big disadvantage. And if you do know about it, you have a great advantage.
Yeah, and like we were saying before, or you were saying, those who are jokingly, those who control the memes control the world. So with respect to putting your intention out there in that way, the part that interests me, where the orgone materials come into play with this Rife Spooky 2 machine, apparently, which is from another guy, Royal Raymond Rife, who also, this stuff was like 100 years ago, and it's been very heavily suppressed this whole time, just like the orgone and Tesla's research.
Let me talk a little bit about that. So basically, you're bringing up the Rife machine, which was developed by Royal Raymond Rife, who was an American. He was based in Southern California, and basically this is a frequency healing machine, right? So we've all seen that video clip of the concert singer, and she can hit a certain pitch, and the wine glass will shatter, right? Well, how does that happen? It's because everything has a resonant frequency. Everything has a frequency, right? And if you hit that frequency and you basically, you could say keep hammering it, just keep beaming that frequency at an object, eventually it will shatter, right? Well, that holds true for everything. That includes bacteria, viruses, right? So every bacteria has a frequency. Every virus has a frequency. So there's a known database of these now. So if you run an electrical current at a certain frequency in your body, the protein coat of the virus will basically explode, or the bacteria will implode. It'll blow up, right? So there's a lot of talk today about, we're facing an apocalypse because we've used all the antibiotics. We don't know what we're going to do. Well, guess what? Here's the answer. It's frequency healing, right? So that's one way. You can kill pathogens with frequency. And there's several modes of transmission, contact mode, which is putting electrical contacts on your body connected to a generator, right? There's the plasma, basically a glass sphere with a plasma gas. Plasma creates a radio wave, so that will pass right through your body. That's what Rife was using. That is the strongest. So whereas you might need like an hour plus of the electrical contact, radio frequency you can do it at probably like 5 or 10 minutes. But it's very strong, so you have to kind of pace yourself as you detox. And then there's also this really cool remote that the Spooky 2 Rife machine has, which is a scalar remote, which is basically it's a quantum remote. It's the orgone energy. So that's what we call non-local action. It's quantum entanglement, right? So you just have a sample of your DNA, which is typically the fingernails. You put them in the remote with a piece of tape, and any frequency that the coil on the scalar transmitter makes, as soon as it hits your sample, you are getting the frequency no matter where you are. If you're in Australia, if you're on the moon, quantum entanglement, because these quantum energies, there is no distance dimension. It's holographic, right? So the only difference between the different modes of transmission is the time. So a scalar frequency, it's going to take longer for it to set in because you're shooting to the energetic layer, and then basically it comes down to the 3D. But the advantage is you don't have to be connected to the machine or sitting in front of a plasma tube, right? So a lot of people consider that convenient. But the encapsulation, Royal Raymond Rife, he invented this healing technology, frequency healing. It works. It was in clinical trials here in Southern California at USC, and they were getting, something like 90% recovery of severe cancer cases and so forth. But it's too efficient and too cheap because you're not able to prescribe pharmaceutical drugs, right? Because once you have the machine, someone to operate the machine, you're basically just paying for electricity, which is pennies, right? I mean, so.
And the software, I think, is open source now. Is that true? The software. That is used for this,
there's different Rife machines out there, but there's a company called the Spooky 2, like the number 2, and they have a team of people that basically out of the goodness of their heart, which is very impressive, there's a team of people that are trying to put this out there to help people, and there is no quote-unquote company.
Right.
That's why it's so cheap. You basically buying straight from the factory. So. And
the troubleshooting is basically from a Facebook group with these individuals and there's like thousands of them helping each other to
right.
To get to the bottom of this.
Yeah, there's a community forum that's really good. And basically the bulk of people that are using it are people with severe, I would say, chronic health problems such as cancer, Lyme disease, or Morgellons, because they're at the end of the rope. They've tried everything, and they said, okay, because it is a very non-traditional method, right? And a lot of people, like, I'm more open-minded. I'm more risk taker. So I'm like, I'm going to try this out because I think it's interesting. But a lot of people, they would never try this out unless they were forced to. But they're getting good results, And, you can use it for something as simple as the common cold or for detoxing. But a lot of people, they come to it when they have chronic health problems. So.
And you can use a laser with it too?
Well, there's different accessories. And one of the newer ones they came out with is what they call cold laser. It's basically an LED, but it's at a one wavelength, which is laser, right? Laser is one wavelength of light, and it looks red, And basically, when you are exposed to this wavelength of light, it speeds up healing, you know. So there's different attachments you can use, but basically it's all frequency healing, and it's something that I think that we've all seen in Star Trek. You know, they have the tricorder, and you know, what are they doing? They're exposing the people to frequency. And actually, this was really pioneered by the Russians, which, you know, I'm really into the whole topic of Russia now, right? Which is interesting because I, like many people, had no interest a few years ago, but it seems like such a hot topic. But the Russians are definitely, at least in the public sphere, at the forefront of frequency technology. And they had developed this for the cosmonauts. So instead of taking a whole, pharmaceutical suitcase, they could take one handheld device and use frequency to help the person, right? Save space.
So what's a cosmonaut exactly? Like
cosmonaut is their word for astronaut.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah. So basically, this kind of frequency technology, Royal Raymond Rife, he was operating, I think, from the 20s, right? But the Russians, they had this, you know, it was in the public sphere, but more like military and, you know, space travel kind of things from like the 70s or something like that. So it's been out there a while, and I think it's going to be something you're going to see more and more. The traditional medicine probably doesn't like it, but just like the internet, if you have the inclination and the interest, there's a lot of things out there for you to try out, and may even heal you better and quicker than a lot of the traditional therapies.
Now, I mean, the thing that blows my mind about this Rife Spooky 2 machine is that it also can be used in, and I hesitate to say this, but in conjunction with sigils. And, you know, like that, I mean, to put your
I mean, I don't want to get into it too deep, but I'll just give a quick overview, because just like pyramids and pyramid energy is a good way to get into, you know, all energy work, right? When you're dealing with frequency, that can tell you a lot about a lot of things, a lot of topics. So, now you mentioned the word sigil, right? Which is a word that's used in Western magic. It's a symbol. It could be even an alphabetic letter. It could be some kind of character or logo, right? But basically, it's a symbol that has some kind of energy attached to it, right? Well, this is where you start to get into the fact that, because I had mentioned the consciousness wave is connected to the source field, right? Well, you can do healing in a lot of different ways, and it can be from purely frequency with a number, right? Which is very understandable. Okay, this bacteria has a frequency, and I'm going to hit its frequency, thereby killing the virus, right? Or bacteria. On the other far end, you're almost going towards voodoo and magic, because what's hands-on healing? Well, actually, you're dealing with frequency too, but it's a lot more amorphous, and you can use various symbols. You can use an intention and boost it through frequency to achieve healing effects. And the Spooky 2 device has a this kind of area is called radionics, and it has a radionics accessory that you can use. And I would say I have one. I'm not an expert, but you know, I haven't used it a lot. But basically, it's more on the side of an art almost, because it's more amorphous, right? And people would say it's unscientific, because they want to put it in the lab and get the same result. But what they don't understand is the mind of the operator. When you get to this far side, not just plugging in numbers, but with dealing with thought forms, intentions, sigils to do healing work, the mind of the operator is innately connected with the result. So if you don't believe in it, or you don't have an understanding of energy work, you're not going to have a reproducible effect every time. Okay? I mean, that the whole area of, this is basically called radionics. It's very interesting because, again, it's another area to show you that the way that we are taught reality works is not quite how it really works.
Definitely fascinating stuff, man. There's a lot of
Well, let me give a quick example, okay?
Yeah.
So the thought wave, okay, can have an effect. And when I do energy work, basically there are visualizations, right? So if you can see in your mind's eye energy, right? Like looking at your body, where do you perceive there's maybe a dark spot, or there's some sort of blockage, right? If you're visualizing cleaning it out and bringing bright gold light into your body, as you visualize it, it is actually happening in real time in your energy body. Okay? Now, I just encourage people to start trying this out, because a lot of people, probably myself included, 15 years ago, would say that's complete BS. You're just making it up in your mind. Well, you know what? Scientific method, right? Start doing these techniques. See for yourself. Put your foot in the other man's shoe. Because I will tell you, this is the mystery of the ages. And these are techniques that I think everybody should know, but we're just not taught. Just like we're taught how to read and write, do mathematics. We're never taught about this part, which is very powerful, right? So let me give you an example. With these radionics devices, you can transmit an energy. Like, say you want to transmit a homeopathic frequency of a pill or an herb. You can target the patient and send them that energy, right? But it's not a number. It's not a frequency like the regular Rife machine. It could be you just place that herb on the input plate and have a photograph of the person, which is their holographic imprint. Maybe even like, before, like you had the nails. That's their DNA sample. There's a quantum piece of them. And it'll go to that person. But you're starting to you see how you're getting a lot more amorphous? You just put like the substance on the input plate, and it's somehow a photograph to target the person. This is kind of like voodoo, right?
And it's like, I think in one of your other interviews, you said that the heart center or heart chakra is one of the largest producers of the scalar waves. Is that
right?
True? So, I mean, yeah, like when you hear about studies about like your heart rate is syncing up with that of your neighbors, even through the walls, without you even having contact, that stuff is fascinating.
Basically, as a human being, we all perceive these things. We all have our first inclination, like, oh, I knew that guy was no good, or I knew I should have done this, but we are taught not to trust ourselves. Mm-hmm. So what I do is teach people to trust yourself.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. That's called being connected to source. Right? And this is all written in the spiritual traditions, but now the so-called science or the medicine is catching up, because we are understanding in the technical sense what the ancients had always said, and it's not just an overlap, it's the same thing, right? So let me give an example again with this radionics, or basically using what we call thought form, or the thought energy, right? So one thing that you can do with the radionics is boost a thought form, or do a manifestation, right? Like, I I want to, basically have more success in my business, or you want to, any kind of thing. I don't want to make it too material, right? But basically, you could call it positive thinking, right? But, and again, this is a thing where it's not like A equals B equals C, because it's very amorphous, right? The time difference, the time to manifestation could vary. But basically, you can write on a piece of paper and just keep thinking that thought. And the we as human beings create scalar waves, consciousness wave. So if you're trained enough, you're balanced enough, every day you keep thinking that, it's going to happen. Which actually people are doing every day anyway. It's just that most of the things they're thinking are negative, so they manifest that, okay? Now, you take it to the next step. Instead of just writing it on a piece of paper, you have a copper tracing. It's a denser material. In a lot of the Indian Vedic system, they'll have these magical symbols or sacred geometry on a copper tracing, right? That will have more power than just a piece of paper, okay? Or I would back up 2 steps. Not even a piece of paper, just the thought, right? And then you can write it on a piece of paper, maybe even make it into, a certain symbol, certain geometrical shapes. If you draw it on a piece of paper, it has more power. Next step, copper tracing. Step after that, you can make a radionics device on a piece of paper, or maybe just a flat copper board with dials, right? With numbers, right? It's like, I'm going to tune it, And people use how you say, a pendulum, or this, I use my own intuition. I say, okay, I'm turning it here, and here, and that's the maximum effect, right? But in the history of radionics, it was actually banned by the FDA because they had some of these machines. They would look at the back and they would say, hey, this is not even connected by an electrical wire. So how the hell does this thing even work? Right? But that's the thing. A lot of these practices, it's training the operator's own thought wave, because you yourself are a scalar generator. I know this is like a long conversation, but I'm just putting it on the table. The way that we were taught reality works is not the whole truth. So then the final step would be you actually have a plate with different knobs, right, to tune the electrical current, and it actually does have an electrical current connected to a frequency generator. That would be like one of the strongest, because now you're actually running electrical current through a board that will have transmitter coils, So, but I just went through the steps, right? It can start as simple as thinking a thought, and then you write it down, and then you use a denser material. And they say, as an example, if you're using a certain broadcasting symbol, right? If it's on a piece of paper, it might take a minute to transmit that energy to somebody, or have the energetic effect. If it's made out of metal, it might take like 5 seconds.
Wow.
And there's actually some of these devices, they're like, I don't know what you would call them. They're based on sacred geometry. They're different rings and things like that. There's one guy in Canada that's making some very good healing tools. But basically, if you were to take some of his, they're like a ring with like spokes, right? He based it on an Indian system that was originally just printed on a card.
Now,
but his they say like you put this ring on something to boost the energy. They say within 5 seconds it should work, but if it was on just paper, it might take like a minute or more.
Interesting.
So I mean that this is where you go from. Now we started this all from just the frequency healing the Rife machine, right? But now we went all the far into it's basically voodoo. But what is that? It's so-called magic, right? Well, this is just manipulation of energy, and it could be used for good or bad. And it's just that the beneficial applications are not being used that much because we were never taught about it.
The circular wire thing you just mentioned, was that the one that I saw? Possibly you had posted a Facebook picture where they put this in front of a speaker for like a music.
Yeah. I think I might see if I have it over here. I don't know if I have it over here. Yeah, it's basically a circle and it has spokes.
Yeah.
So the spokes out, it basically amplifies or broadcasts energy. The spokes in will neutralize the energy, you know.
Wow.
So sometimes like you want to blank the energy out on like a crystal. You know, you can do that with energy healing with your hands, or, you know, they say put it outside in the moonlight or whatever. But just using these tools, you just put it over, boom, 5 seconds, it's done. Because, again, I don't know, I think I mentioned this before. These kind of energies, these subtle energies, they can be imprinted on objects, right? And that's how, you know, people that they do what they call psychometry, they can touch an object and they go, oh, okay, this was owned by this person, whatever. Because there's almost like a flavor. There's a quantum imprint on there. You know, so.
Interesting. Well, the ring you mentioned there, it reminds me of the tensor rings. Now, does it have to be a specific made of a specific thing, or like copper, or?
I'm not sure like what materials they use, but the one I have, it's these sacred geometry like rings, right? They look like a circle. They have like different platings, different layers of platings. So I'm not too well versed, but you know what? I would say there's two things when you're using energy tools that are very important. One is the geometry, the shape, because the shape itself has an energy, right? And if you think about it, circle looks like a star with the points out, spokes out. What does that look like? It's like throwing the energy out, right? Spokes in, it's like neutralizing, right? It's the energy is coming in, not going out. So shape alone has the energy, and then two's material. So,
well, I mean, maybe we should talk about the tensor rings a little bit right now. I don't know how much light you could shed on that.
Okay, I'm not an expert on this, but I use them. So basically, what they call the tensor rings or the tensor coils are another class of energy tools, and you're typically just made out of copper wire that you would find at the hardware store. So I initially, I mean, I love them, but I initially did not believe they could have such a strong effect, which was what you're going to find with a lot of these things, you know. And I would just encourage people to do their own research, right? Scientific method. Don't believe what I say. Go try it out yourself. But I say that I didn't believe they could have such a strong effect because it's just wire that you can find at the hardware store, but based on the way that it's twisted, and the real key is the length it's cut to. It begins to resonate at a certain frequency. Yeah, there you go. The triskelion, right? Or they call it, I think it's Hideka, right? That's a water symbol. Amir's holding up one he made. Now, I have here, this is one of Brian Besco. It's a tensor sphere. So it's like, I think, four circles interlocked. This thing is really strong, right? So the common denominator between all these tensor tools is they're typically made of copper. They're cut to a certain length, twisted. I guess you would call it a helix, right? It has a twist in it, and they're soldered. But they're cut to certain cubit lengths, and these are sacred geometrical lengths. A lot of them, they were used in the megaliths or the pyramids. So it's interesting. Just if you follow that length, you cut it. Okay, first you have a wire, right? Straight wire. Okay, then you cut it, right? Just cutting it to a certain length makes it resonate at a certain frequency, right? If you take that wire and make a circle and like weld or solder it, you have a circle, right? But one side is positive and one side is negative. Okay? But if you put a twist in it, right? Like this.
Yeah.
There's no polarity. Both sides become positive. So that's why it has this twist. So, I mean, and I can go in. I won't go into it here, but that twist is very key because when wires have electrical energy running through, it had wire with the electricity going through, it has a magnetic field, right?
Yeah.
But when two magnetic fields cancel, it creates a scalar wave, which is like this high energy. It's like a precursor wave. It's a source field, right? So when you put that twist in there, all of the electromagnetic energy from the Wi-Fi, from radio waves, even there's also just light and things coming from outer space passing through the planet, right? As it hits that twist in the tensor tool, it's creating this positive energy. And this, again, is such a fundamental building block of reality. It is literally what allowed the Nazis to create UFOs. I'm not joking. That's true. They call it the counter rotation of electromagnetic fields. Yeah.
Wow. Well, and also for the audience wondering about the scientific method aspect of this, these triskelions, what is said about these is if you put some water on top of it in a glass, in 24 to 48 hours later, you'll notice that it neutralizes the pH in the water. Right. So that's one thing people could do, a simple experiment, and they can replicate that, and they can test it before and after. So there you have it. I mean,
well, that it's the triskelions. Basically, it's typically talked of as like a Celtic symbol. It's like a triple swirl, right? It's known as a water symbol, and just that alone, like you're saying, and you put it in water or you put it under a cup, it will so-called structure the water or energize the water. And what happens is it lowers the surface tension. And the water will taste sweeter somehow. I don't know if you've done this, but to me it tastes smoother and sweeter.
Yes.
And it lowers the surface tension. So what does that mean? It makes water wetter. So you know how you drink that bottle of tap water that they sell in the plastic bottle? You drink a whole bottle and you're still thirsty? Well, that's because your body didn't absorb anything. That water was dead.
Wow.
But when you use the energy tool, it actually lowers the surface tension, and your body, it's more bioavailable. Your body will absorb more of the water. And a lot of health problems are actually just dehydration. So.
Yeah, and another interesting thing I found, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the claim was made that it alters the structure of the water so that it absorbs more photons. And if that's true, by the way, there's this other thing I came across called Photon Genius, which is an infrared sauna.
Oh yeah.
Infrared sauna. So
my buddy's into that one. I haven't messed with that one, but I could speak a little bit on it.
Interesting. Well sure. Right after I say this, which is that I think if you're using this triskelion or this tensor technology to to get this happening in the water that you're either drinking, or since we're mostly made of water, if you just have it on you, that could have a synergistic effect if you then go into the infrared sauna as well. Because if the sauna is all about absorbing light, and this thing helps you in that respect. So with a lot of the stuff we're seeing, I mean, people always want just like one solution, one thing, but there's so many different avenues you can go with healing that it's best to not put all your eggs in one basket. And
right. Well, and I'll have to say that not like how you say one size doesn't fit all, one size fit all. It doesn't.
Yeah.
And even if technically something should work, people have to understand that karmically, it's not everybody's. Not all people are open to certain things, and somehow they may not be. It's like magnets, right? They may not be attracted to that. So it's just like people learn in different ways. People are healed in different ways. So not all, if they're open to it, then it may work. But if they're not open to it, they may have to go another way, right? But now we talked about the Rife machine, which was based on frequency healing, but you're basically killing pathogens, right? You're killing off the parasites, you're killing off the bacteria, you're killing off the virus, right? But there's another way you can go, because you can go from one side, kill things off. There's another way you can go, is basically energize the body. Because one thing we're not told is disease is a frequency. So if you pump energy in, and you could use like photons or light, right? You actually start ramping the frequency of the body up, and the disease will start, going away. Now, if you're getting sick, the frequency of your body will go lower and lower and lower, right? So actually, the human body is like a battery, but we're not told this. It's a very simple concept, but it's true. And there's different modalities that can, as simple as just eating the right food, because organic foods have a life component. That sawdust power called Soylent that the techies are eating as a food replacement, what are they forgetting? They're forgetting the life component. They literally, I don't know if people have heard, you can go look it up. There's this protein powder called Soylent, right? And they say it has exactly what you need. You don't need to eat food anymore. Well, that's that reductionist thing. It's hilarious, actually, when you think about it, because they have a photo of this grayish powder and like an apple or something next to it, a nice, fresh apple. And people are so reductionist now, they literally think eating this powder is the same as eating an apple. Okay? But anyway, I just give that as an example because that's how far we've become disconnected from reality, right? But there was a man who's not as well known as Rife, but his name was George Lakovsky, or it was like Georges Lakovsky. He was a Russian. He lived in Paris for a while, and then he came to New York. But instead of, killing off a disease, he came from the area of pumping energy into the body, ramping the frequency of the person up, and he was also getting very good effects. But it's very interesting, and I can't remember exactly when he moved to the States. It was probably maybe the 40s or 50s. But within a week of him arriving in New York, a car hit him, and he died. So, lot of stories like that in the past. I don't think. I think things are just too widespread now to suppress, and and China is making a lot of these machines. So, I mean, once China can, once the Chinese factories are making it, it's pretty much out there.
Oh yeah. Well, at this point, I think we covered a lot. Unless you want to add, if anything's coming to your mind right now. I mean, because we started off, we did mention that you have background in the DJing and all this other
Yeah.
stuff. So, and you have some strange LA stories that you could possibly share. But I don't
Oh
know.
yeah.
I don't know if you want to save that for another time, or if
look,
you want.
if you're not tired, we can just switch gears and go in that direction because a lot of what we talked about was very technical. But when you start getting into the cultural things, I mean, that's sort of like more fun to talk about. I mean, I think it's all, good. But when you're talking about like medical equipment and this and that, it's, it's a very select, group. But, I find all these things interesting because I basically lived it, It's not just because I had the interest, but I went out there. I've used a lot of these things personally. And I'm involved in making these energy pyramids and gifting them to people or giving them to people, healing myself with frequency healing. And so, I can speak on it because I experienced it and I use it.
Sure. Yeah, my only concern is if the technical difficulties, if we go too long for this software that I'm using or whatever. But so,
okay. Well, I'm recording too. Don't forget.
Of course. Well, sure. Let's go ahead then. I am 3 hours different from your location, so we can't go too long. But
right. Okay.
We'll go ahead.
What do you want to talk about?
Well, you mentioned. You could either go into some strange LA stories, or you have possibly some insight on the DJ stuff, the history of that scene, etc.
Okay, well, I think just going into the Hollywood thing, I think that's a whole subject in itself. So I'm born and grown in Los Angeles, right? I pretty much grew up in the shadow of the Hollywood sign. It's just over the ridge, so I can't see it directly, but I'm basically grown up in LA, right? The interesting thing though is because I grew up in a Buddhist family in the Buddhist temple. It's like my mentality was completely opposite of what people think of Los Angeles. Even though I'm smack dab in the middle of LA, I didn't have an understanding of the whole industry thing until I was much older. Because it's not what I'm interested in. It's totally opposite of what I was brought up, right? But I'm all around it, so it's interesting that at a certain point, it's like my eyes opened up and I started to understand what I've been living in my whole life, right? So, Hollywood. Going back to, why is it called Hollywood? Some of this people may consider like it's conspiracy porn or he's going off in that direction again. But there is a truth to a lot of these things, and I think if people haven't heard it, it's kind of interesting to just talk about it, right? So originally, where the Hollywood sign is, it said Hollywood Land, right? Because they were selling houses out. Hollywood Land. They were selling houses out here. But then they took the land off and it just said Hollywood, right? But they say that, esoterically it has a meaning. And what's Hollywood all about? It's about entertainment, right? It's about movies. It's about music. It's the entertainment industry. So people know Hollywood. There's even they admit it themselves. It's largely run by Jewish people, right? But I would say maybe the culture here is Druish. It's Druidic. You're going back to a lot of esoteric stuff. And I say that because Hollywood, they say that the wizards or the sages in Northern Europe, they used to have the magic wand, right? You've all seen Mickey Mouse, Fantasia. He has the magic wand, right? And what does the magician do? He waves the magic wand to put the pixie dust in your eyes to mesmerize you and put you to sleep. And they say the magic wand was made of the wood of the holly tree. So it's Hollywood. You get it?
Absolutely.
So in what happens when you go to the movies? You're in there with a group of people. They bring the lights down, and you have flickering images moving at you. This is exactly the same as hypnotism, right? You bring the lights down. So they have this thing called the triune God, right? They always have the three, right? Like the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and so forth. And you have like, all systems, they have the triune God. It's always 3 points. Well, you have the financial, which could be like London or New York, right? You have the political, which would be like Washington, D.C., maybe. In the American instance, it would be like New York's the financial. It's all the bankers, right? D.C. would be the political arm. And what's the third point? It's L.A. That's the propaganda arm. That's the media arm, right? So you have the 3 points. So this is what LA is all about. And I would say that a lot of people, they always think of America as, they're the military country. They're such bullies. And that's true. But I think that it's always focused on the military. But what's even more powerful is the psychological. And this is, what Hollywood is all about, because throughout the world, what kind of movies do people watch? American movies, right? It's American culture. And you grow up with these people. They're the stars. They're the celebrities. It's like you get brainwashed into the view that Hollywood projects, right? And it's always presented to people. This is the height of civilization. This is the peak of modernity. The West is cutting edge. You people in the Middle East and Asia and Latin America, you're kind of like a backwater, really. Like, you really want to live our values. You want to live our way, right? So it's a big, I don't want to swear, but it's a big mind F, because so you have that where the American way of life is presented to people as the pinnacle of civilization. This is the cutting edge. This is the future, right? If you want to better your life, this is the way. And hey, it's fun, it's slick, right? And this is the thing too. Compared to the Eastern Bloc, the communist Soviet era, it's a joke. What they were doing over there, it's like, oh, that's state media. It's very drab. I mean, it's very cookie cutter, right? Think about Hollywood. It's very slick. It's sexy. You have the girls in mini skirts. It's like the pumping music. It's got the bass. I mean, it's a complete, it's very engaging, right? It's fun. So even more so, people get hypnotized. And so when you combine that with what has been happening the last century, where these countries outside the U.S. are exploded, colonized, even destroyed, then the refugees or the economic migration comes to the Western countries, right? Because basically, even if it's like Britain or Europe or America, the media is coming out of Hollywood, right? It covers the whole Western world. This is where you want to be. So these people, they have a low self-esteem about, how come our country can't do it? We're always messed up. We're going to move to America, right? Then they get engaged in the lifestyle in the West, and then they become the West, right? And then the manipulated and exploited countries will, quote unquote, always be behind. But the psychological factor of believing that the Western way is the best way is a complete mind F that's being pumped out of Hollywood.
And you see it not just from the movies, but the TV shows, everything. I mean, I think a long time ago I went to Germany when I was like 8 or 10 or 12, and I remember seeing Third Rock from the Sun on TV. That television show. And, Simpsons and so on. And I remember also back when I did some university, we had this human rights seminar. A guy came in and spoke about how after the first Gulf War in Iraq, after their currency had been destroyed and everything, that guest speaker had actually been in Iraq at that time, in that period, and noted that the people in the coffee shops and stuff were watching American media shows and movies, and he'd ask them, like, aren't you pissed that they're bombing you? And they'd be like, no, we can tell the difference between like a people and their government. And but so that's one aspect of it, but definitely all eyes of the world were sort of on the U.S. for when it was doing well for itself, so to speak.
Well, too, it is kind of based on context, because even though a lot of it is propaganda, say you're from Brazil, because I go to Brazil a lot, so I've seen this firsthand, where half the country is some shade of brown, but most of the people they look like they're from Germany. They're blonde and blue-eyed, very Nordic type. So for them to get some of the black humor, and everybody hates Chris, and those kind of the black comedies down there, they love it because they don't really have shows like that. So a lot of it's based on context, or some of the things like we've talked about where I think some of the social movements are being manipulated. Like, again, we all want people to have their rights and so forth, but I think some of the things like the feminism have been used to manipulate people, right? But down in Latin America, with the macho culture, when they get some of the feminist influence, for them, it's like a breath of fresh air. So some of it is based on context, right? But in general, what I said about, Hollywood being used as a cultural weapon, really, to not only is the West exploiting all these countries, but you're being told you're backwards because you don't have all the cars and, in the movie where the heroes are dodging explosions and the women are in mini skirts and they have the newest iPhone. It's like, all the countries with the thousands of years of indigenous culture, and basically you're a failure. But a lot of the people, it's a deep subconscious thing where they don't link that. Well, it's because you're being exploited. That's why, right?
Yeah, and the movie theater, I'll say the movie theater near where I live has 3 stars on the logo, and each star is a 6-pointed star. So it's like 666 right on the logo of the movie theater. So yeah, this magic stuff is powerful. And
well, I'll pull this in because you were just mentioning that I sent you a show with Sophia Smallstorm, and she was talking about the sigils.
Yeah.
With I think the Sage of Quay, right?
Yeah.
So, we were talking before. The source field is basically interchangeable with consciousness wave or thoughts. Attention, right? You played in a band, right? I've DJ'd.
Yeah.
Right? So there is something beyond just playing live. When you have the people's eyes on you, you get a rush. Anybody that's been in front of a crowd of a certain size, you know this, right? Well, think about if you're in a stadium in front of like 20, 30,000 people and having the eyes and the mental energy of all those people concentrated on one person. That's a tremendous amount of energy. Now, multiply that or take that to another phase where the movies and the themes being pumped out are being consumed by millions of people, right? And remember, I was talking about the manifestation, right? So you yourself as one person, if you have your mind trained enough, you can make things manifest. You can make them happen. At first, it was just an idea in your mind, but it's a thought wave. And at a certain point, it descends into the 3D because as above, so below. Just as a disease, right? You have some imbalance in your energy. It may take years, but at some point it becomes a physical disease, right? So we know that the energy form is actually a precursor wave. It constructs reality in the 3D, right? So if you're pumping out certain themes and molding certain realities through entertainment, and you have the energy of millions of people, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people, don't you think that can shape the future probabilities that you want? Right? That's extremely powerful. This is magic.
Especially if a lot of those people are watching this in the evening hours, and some of them are falling asleep to the movie. So, like, there's a period of time when they're not even having a conscious filter with respect to what they're consuming.
Well, you know, it's known, right? This is all the conspiracy geeks know this, that the flicker rate of the TV, it's like at first it takes you like a few minutes to become in a hypnotic state, but then after that, it's like within seconds, as soon as you're watching the TV, the mind becomes totally wide open to all the stuff coming through. Now, I'll give you another example. You know, popular series right now, The Walking Dead, right? The zombie series, right? You're probably aware of this, The Walking Dead, right?
Vaguely remember hearing about it. Go ahead.
Okay, well, it's a popular series out there. It's basically, you know, post-apocalyptic and there's zombies running around, right?
Yeah.
Now, I was listening to an interview with there's an Asian guy. He's Korean, right? He was on the show. The one Asian character, right? Pretty normal interview. Nothing really, you know, lifted my eyebrows. But then he came to like some point in the interview where he was saying, well, they filmed the show in Atlanta, right? So he's saying, oh, you know, it's down there. It's really hot. We spend, you know, months shooting. He goes, but, you know, at the end of a season, like, we've all dropped a lot of weight. And the reason he gave was very interesting. He says, you know, even though it's just acting, because in the scenes they're basically in a post-apocalyptic environment, they have these zombies coming at them, they're in a fight for survival, and they're actors, right? They get into their role. Their mind goes into a fight or flight mode. Okay? So their physical body is in like a tense state, and by the end of a season, they've dropped weight, just like they were really in the fight for their life with these zombies.
Wow.
What kind of psychological effect do you think it has on people when they're watching The Living Dead, which is a very low frequency, and it's their favorite show, and they watch it every week? What kind of thought forms is putting that out into the public? And what kind of dreams are these people having? You're basically bringing the level of society down, you know?
Reducing awareness as much as possible.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's also just at the basic, it's a fear, right? And when you're in a fear state, you like lock up, right? It's like the deer in the headlights, they call it, right? You lock up. And, you know, this is being introduced at a time, too, when, you know, there's a lot of things going on in the world, and people are, you know, naturally, they're already, like, in a fear state, you know? And then you have, I just find it very interesting. That's one anecdote of how one of the actors on the show said it had a profound effect on their physical being. So you have to think, taking that to you know, all the people that are watching that, what kind of effect is it having on them?
Absolutely, it's a lot to think about. It's epic, is what it is. It's
oh yeah. But you know too. I think that you know, one of the things I want to say is I have been kind of into these kind of topics for many years, and a lot of times, I would say the majority of the time, it's always focused on the negative aspects, right? Which is, I don't think it's a bad thing, because if you want to really know what's going on in the world, it's like a doctor. You need to diagnose the problem, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, you don't want to dwell there. You want to say, hey, knowing this, what can we do? And for many years, I was stuck in that, oh, no, that's not how it is. You know, it was the truther syndrome. Like, you all are wrong. I figured it out, and you all are stupid. But that really doesn't help anybody, right? I never call people stupid, but in my mind, it's like it's a big burden because you've had the veil peeled off, right? You've seen more of reality that you never knew about, but then they never talk about any solutions. So when I started working with the orgonite pyramids, right, physically making something with my hand, I make something with my hands, I sent it out, I got the feedback, hey, I feel great, I'm getting better sleep. That's real, that's concrete, right? It totally broke me out of, you know, being stuck and being in that fear mentality, because if you know all these things but you can't do anything, that can be pretty depressing. That's why a lot of people, they don't even want to hear about this kind of stuff, because number one, once you know, you have the responsibility to do something. And number two, what can you as one person do? Well, you know what? I think it's time for a lot of us to start thinking about what we can do. And there's a lot of things out there, you know, the energy tools, body work, you know, healing, all these kind of modalities. So, well, a lot of the things that we talked about as far as Hollywood and the manipulation can be used for positive purpose too. It's just that I think a lot of people, we're just becoming aware of this, and you know, you can flip it too, because any kind of imagery, sigils, sacred geometry, just in seeing it, if you see a beautiful artwork, it will have an uplifting effect on you. And if you see a lot of this, you know, degenerate, entropic, right, the breaking down kind of art, well, you're in that. You're like in crap. You're like putting all these negative images in your mind, right? You know, and it's a balance. We never want to be that like love and light 24/7. We're human beings, so we have our light periods and our dark periods. But in general, if you are exposed to more uplifting things, even just looking at a piece of art, it actually does have a profound effect on you.
Well, I've definitely noticed that. I mean, even when I look at the horoscope forecast for myself each day, if it'll say the key colors for today, and I'll notice that when I put my wallpaper on my computer to be coinciding with that color, I'm like, hey, yeah, they're onto something, because I'm really feeling that color today, unlike yesterday. And you know, it's kind of hard to verify this, but it seems accurate.
Well, you broke up a lot there. Could you repeat what you said?
Oh, well, I was just saying that you know, this reminds me of. I mean, you're saying art having an effect on a person in a healing way. Well, it can be as simple as even just the colors as well, too.
Oh yeah.
And a color, a specific color depending on the specific day, because like you said, it's all about balance and so on, and there's different seasons and different things that happen.
Could I bring up some of the stuff on what I've been finding with the whole topic of the Russia, and you know, it connects to Syria, because I think it's pretty interesting.
Please, you seem excited to share it. Why not?
Okay, well, you know, especially too because there's seems like the so-called liberation of Syria is really on the move. You know, they seem to be really clearing out the ISIS and the radical Islamics out of Syria. So it's kind of a topical thing, but. You know, Russia's there. They've been there for, I don't know, must be almost 2 years now. But, there, you know, of course, there's a strategic reason why Russia's there, because the U.S. or the West, they want to get at Russia's underbelly. So the route is to clear out, you know, take over all the Middle Eastern countries, last would be Iran, and then you're right. You have Russia. I mean, Russia's already surrounded. So there's a strategic reason why Russia is in Syria. So basically, stop the advance right there, right? But what a lot of people don't know, and I bring this up too because you're Syrian Canadian, right? So
Yeah.
what a lot of people don't know is Russia and the Russia sphere has a several millennia old connection with the Middle East and Syria, right? And we hear about Palmyra and some of these cities. These are swastika cities, right? And the swastika, they say, some people say, oh, Nazi Germany, but we know that, that was like only, 1940s? The swastika goes back thousands of years. The Nordics or the Europeans were Vedic before 1000 AD. So they were basically, it was the same culture as what people think of as India, right? Interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And it's interesting that ISIS and these jihadis are blowing up all these cities that have swastikas all over them. Okay? So the Russians are blood brothers of the peoples in the Middle East. So there's an esoteric or an occult reason why Russia's there also. And I've found, I grew up Buddhist family. My family's like 400 years Buddhist priests in Japan. And I grew up in a Buddhist temple. But now what I'm finding, it doesn't invalidate what I learned, but it puts a completely new twist on the history of Buddhism and what's really been happening on this planet. Because you and I, Amir, of course, we're connected as human beings, but besides that, we are connected by this tradition. Because what is the symbol, a typical symbol of Buddhism? Well, it's a swastika, right? And this connects to the whole Vedic sphere, which a lot of people are unaware of, that Russia has a deep root. And furthermore, the historical Buddha, right, the Buddha, do you know that he was a Nordic? He was an Aryan prince, right? He had blue eyes. And people say like, well, how can you prove this? There's many signs. And I kind of knew a lot of these things, and it's not really disputed, but people don't focus on it. The Buddha, his name was Siddhartha Gautama, right? But his title was Shakyamuni or Shakyamuni Buddha, right? Well, the Sakas or Shakyas is the Saks, right? They call Cossack, like the Kazakhs, which are Russians. Or they say Saxon, right? Anglo-Saxon. Those are the Latinized, the German Sacs. So this is a Nordic tribe, and they were located in Central Asia. And it's always said that the Buddha was Indian. But at that time, what is Persia and India had a great overlap. So you could also say the Buddha was Persian. And what do we know about Persia? There was a lot of Nordics there, right? Like today, there are a lot more with a darker hair, and you don't see that trait very strong because of the ethnic migrations back and forth. But at the time, they were, you would see what people probably say is more Scandinavian looking,
Interesting.
So, a lot of people that are into Eastern mysticism, religion, they say, oh, Buddhism, Asia, right? Like I'm Asian, What are the countries you find Buddhism? Like China, India, not so much anymore. But, Vietnam, Korea, Japan. Well, this is because the Silk Road, which extended all the way from Central Asia, went all the way east, and Japan was the end point. So we received all of this culture, and I'm working on some things, but I could put a very visual presentation that a majority of Japanese culture is based on Central Asia, and you could say even Middle East. And it's all in the imagery. It's in the art. It's in the religion. It's the culture. And the Buddha, he's an Aryan prince, right, from Central Asia. So this is something that I think is very significant, and it's been covered up. And and then also I think there's two things. This is my perception at this time, so it may change in the future. The title of Aryan, it just means learned person, right? So you could be any ethnicity and be an Aryan, right? But I do think there is some genetic component. Okay? I'm not saying the white man has all the answers, but this is something I'm looking into, and it's very explosive, because you talk about any of these kind of topics, it's very explosive. But I really think that the Western Europe and the European, like the white man, was the first to be colonized. Because why do we not know that the Europeans, like the Vikings, basically, right? They were Vedic. It's a form of the Vedic culture. The neo-pagan stuff was actually very similar to the Indians today. Why are we not taught this? Why don't we even know about this? Because it's like, oh, the white man don't know anything, right? It's all the other ethnics. Because, if you go back, the Celtics are tribal, right? They have all these other, the Teutonic tribes and so forth. The Slavics and the Russians still retain a lot of it. But, in the West today especially, it's like white privilege. You guys are just oppressors. Plus, you don't know anything. You're just white bread. You have no culture. Well, I think there's a reason why they have no culture. Is because they've been completely colonized and brainwashed by the force that is controlling the whole planet, right? And you have to remember the Cathars and the Gnostics in France. They were all genocided, right? And then, the church set up and so forth. But there was something going on in Western Europe where a part of archontic or negative force took over, and from there, they colonized the whole world. But the white people, I think, were the first to be colonized. And one of the major repositories of the tribal and cultural heritage of the white man, but a lot of the world, is in Russia. It's very deep, and it's somewhat explosive, but it's like there's an occult reason why Russia's in the Middle East, and there's a lot of things that we have not been told about Russia.
Well, you just that was very fascinating. You connected a lot of dots there. If what your findings are accurate.
And I'll throw this out real quick too. There's a reason why Russia is a leader in frequency and resonance technology and quantum technology. And a lot of people, they don't know that Russia is also a leader in pyramid research. Because if you say pyramid, what does your mind go to? It's like Egypt, right? Giza pyramid. Typically, some people might say Mayan pyramid, but never Russia, right? Right. Yet, of all the people in the world, who has the most advanced pyramid research? It's the Russians. There's a historical and genetic link, I think. So people, this is like, people are probably like, psh, but this is true. They're like, and what they, one thing they say in the Krishna scripture, what was first shall be last. So, and things go in cycles, right? So things are returning around to a point where we have forgotten a lot of things. But some of these pockets, like, to a lot of us in the West, like Russia's sort of a backwater, not even worth looking into, studying. There's a lot of interesting things in this Russia sphere.
Yeah, and I mean, from looking at some of the alien stuff, on the cosmic switchboard and other researchers you've brought to my attention.
Mm-hmm.
I think I lost my train of thought there.
Well, I mean, as far as like occult stuff, do you know that supposedly the Slavic languages are the closest to Sanskrit which is Indian, right? Yeah, I would never have thought that, but they say it's true. Also, if you want to go on that far out edge, Aryan, right? Orion. There's a connection there between Aryan and Orion. And it has to do with the far north. And who's in the far north? Russia covers a lot of that. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, the swastika itself, one of the associations is that I believe it's like the Big Dipper. It turns to the 4 seasons, right? But the formation, if you plot each position, is a swastika. And it can only be seen from basically the northern hemisphere.
Wow.
And the key points are all in the Orion's belt. Okay, so one of the things that, and this gets into the whole ancient aliens and so forth, but they always say, if you look at these things like the researchers like Zachariah Sitchin and so forth, oh, it's the Anunnaki and it's Nibiru and all that. But what's not really talked about that much, although it's in his text, what are the star systems that are connected to this whole story? Orion and Sirius. Orion and Sirius. But it's always Anunnaki, Nibiru, 12th planet, whatever. No. Orion and Sirius. That's the 2 that you got to look at. And then, it's so pervasive. Once you start looking into this, it becomes clear. Because even in the movies like Blade Runner, I don't know if you remember that scene where it's Rutger Hauer. He's like the clone or whatever they are, right? They're the super soldiers, right? Which is funny because that's such a theme now, but it all came around. As he's dying, he says, "Man, I've seen things that you will never believe," and he says Orion, like I've been like on Orion's arm or something like that. So why do they say that? They could just use any constellation. Because these people that are writing these movies and the entertainment, they know their stuff, man. That's why. they're giving a tip of the hat, and for people that know, they're like, "Oh, you know what you're talking about." But for the 99% of other people, they're just like, "Whoop!" It went in one ear and went out the other.
That's just entertainment. Yeah.
So.
Well,
yeah, but
go ahead.
No, I mean, we talked about a lot of things, and I hope people find it interesting because, once you start getting into a topic, I'm honestly trying to explain things. So I hope it wasn't too drawn out, but this is like real stuff, man. So I would just encourage people, whether it's the healing, the energy healing, or any of these topics, go read up on it or go try it yourself, because it has like real world application. It's actually exciting because I think a lot of people, they feel disempowered today, and there's a lot. I hear it a lot. Like, people, they just want to throw up their hands and give up, or they become what you call nihilist, right? I don't care. I can't do anything, so I'm just going to enjoy today and pleasure myself, right? But it's a very limited view. It's just because they haven't seen what's out there. They don't even know what's on the board, right? And I think that it's funny. We have more access today than ever before in modern times, right, with the internet. But it seems like over the past 10 years, people have become more and more uneducated, and it might be the pace of the culture or whatever. But this is a very exciting time if you have the interest. It's all out there for you. So, go out there, guys. It's you can do some amazing stuff. And look what I did with just some plastic resin, metal, and crystal. I'm like, improving people's health. So
And the Spooky 2 machine is just $500 to get the parts.
It's less. It's
less
than that.
now. Okay.
It's about $380 US. That's shipped.
Wow.
And you'll get it in less than a week because I think it ships like priority or whatever. But yeah, there's a lot of things that you can do. And I'll just mention this too. I am no sage. I'm not perfect. I love to eat tacos. I love to eat, right? But you know what I found is I was starting to have some health problems, and the simple diet cleanse, it improved like maybe 70% of my problems. Because they just say that the food now with all the GMOs and stuff, your intestines just get like blocked up. So just doing a simple diet cleanse, you start, you know, it doesn't matter how many pills you're taking or vitamins if you can't absorb it, right? So a simple diet cleanse just cleans you out. Body, you know, if you let the body do the work, you will heal. So, you know, yeah.
Yeah, it always surprises me how little we need to recharge our batteries and stuff like that. I mean, you have 2 days on the weekend, and that's it. And then people go and they have you don't need much more than that. You don't need much more than a vacation. Like, it's like some people go on a vacation every single year. Like, okay, I'm not trying to sound like Agenda 21 or anything like that, but you know, the point being that just try it out. Try as many different avenues as you can, and diet is just one of those avenues. And you know, you might be trying some other stuff. If you look at the diet, they'll have synergistic effects.
Well, you know, I think a lot of people have this problem with the diet because, see, different energy points, or the chakras, right? Energy system, they're connected to different organs, and that stomach area is second chakra, so it's all emotional. They say second chakra is connected to emotion, creativity, and sex. Okay? So, emotional stuff, we all have things from our family, and a lot of people, they just have low self-esteem and they feel bad about themselves because we are in an artificial, unnatural system, right? We're not allowed to really run and do what we were born to do as a human being has a great potential. So we don't understand why we're not doing so well. We have the traumas from our family and all these things. So remember, again, I said, as above, so below, right? So if you have an energetic blockage in your second chakra, which is for women, it can also be the womb, right? But typically digestive system, the gut, right? Which is your emotional brain. If you have a blockage there, how is that going to manifest? It's going to manifest as digestive problems. So I'm one also. When I look back, a lot of my problems were all related to that. And when I started the healing path, I was taking acupuncture, and that helped a lot. But I came to this is after like a couple years at least, and I spent a lot of money. Okay, I spent a lot of money in acupuncture, basically not doing anything else, just trying to heal myself, right? I came to a certain point where I was like, I'm not really getting much return anymore from the acupuncture. And then I started realizing as I took classes doing energy work and so forth, it's an energetic problem. It's an emotional problem, right? So you can't take a pill for an emotional problem, right? You can't take a pill for when you were 5 and, you know, your dad beat you up or whatever, or mom didn't give you enough attention. That's something you have to work out on a deeper level. You can't give a pill for that, right? So this is when you start going to the deeper levels where the hospital can do a lot of things. I mean, the technology, the knowledge is advanced a lot, you know, so that if you have a broken bone or something like that, great. They really know what to do. I wouldn't try to set a bone at home, you know, But if you're dealing with deeper issues, hospital can't help you. I mean, you tell me. If you're dealing like, hey, doctor, like I was abused when I was a kid, they'll be like, yeah, you go see the psychiatrist, but you're going to be in sessions for years. And I can tell you, in my opinion, people that do energy work and these sort of like healing visualizations, very effective,
Well, I've been noticing that myself actually, and I owe a lot of my, I guess, getting interested in this stuff again to you. I mean, as I told you before, I had been slightly dabbling in like Reiki kind of stuff when I was in my early 20s. Put it on the back burner for a long time. Like it actually surprised me how long I had put it on the back burner for, and it's just really good and inspiring and empowering to be able to meet people who can help us take responsibility for our own health.
Well, I feel good about it now because I'm on, I'm either I see the light at the end of the tunnel, or I went through the toughest period. But trust me, man, this thing about the healing path, it's basically that archetypal thing about the hero's journey or the shaman, where you have some kind of primal wound, you're divorced from society, you can't live like a normal person, right? You have to heal yourself. You go through the what they call the dark tunnel, right? And you have to basically search for the thing that's going to heal you. And it could take you into all these esoteric topics that you never would have looked at otherwise. But then when you heal yourself and you emerge back to the normal world, you still retain that knowledge. You don't forget it. And now you can apply that not just for yourself, but you can apply that to your tribe or your people or society. So in short, I got my butt kicked for many years. But you know what? One thing about me, I could have been depressed. I could have felt like, I can't even get out of bed. But I'm stubborn, man. So I knew I knew somehow I was gonna make it. And here I am today. But I'm also kind of a different mind. So even if it was gonna take me 20 years, man, I did it. A lot of people, I don't know what they would do, because the kind of stuff that I had to look into, a lot of people would think is totally crazy, or they would be too ashamed to do it. I mean, now I talk about this publicly, but I've been doing it so long, like I don't care what people think. I know it worked for me, and I work with other people, and they give me good feedback. So, I mean, that's one thing. If I can give any advice to people, don't worry what other people think of you. Because when you do energy work, and especially when you do clairvoyant work, you have to have an internal compass to check against, is the information what I'm getting correct or not? You have to already know. If you start thinking about like, well, I have to ask this guy, or what are they going to think if I'm doing this? It's like you're never going to get anywhere, because you already have to. And this comes with experience too. So when you work with people doing energy work, healing work, clairvoyant work, you can't ask the other guy like, can you check what I'm seeing? You could ask another clairvoyant maybe, but they don't know what's going on in your head. Like, you have to already have been doing the practice, start getting a sense. It's like riding a bike. And like now, when I do stuff, like if I'm asked a question, checking things out, I might say, oh, it's this. And like, oh, you know what? Let me check again, because I'm feeling like it's a little bit off. Check it a couple times, and I've been doing it enough. I'm like, this is it. This is my answer. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But this is my answer. I don't change. Even, nobody's got 100% success rate. But I say, this is my answer. At this point, I checked it a couple times. This is my answer. I'm not going to change it. So.
Wow. So we just went all over the map here. It was
Yeah.
quite a seamless. It went better than I thought. Actually, I was worried about like only being able to do like 1 hour. We don't like I don't know how long it's been now.
Oh no, we could talk because basically, I mean, we're coming up. Yeah, we're coming up at the end of the second hour. But I would just say this: what is spirituality, or what is religion based on? Right? There's two questions: who am I, and why am I here? Right? And basically, what is the nature of reality? Well, what we have been taught is so far off from how things really work, because there is a framework, right? That you could talk about this all day. You could talk about this. I mean, you could take a full college course, you know. And I've just been able to spend a lot of time focusing on this stuff, and then finally have some solutions that I apply to myself. And you know, I do teach classes, right? I have the Organite pyramids. If people want to check those out at acquainted.com. That's AKAIDA.com. I give numerology readings, right? So if you're at a crossroads, you really need some answers. It's a very good way, whether it's career, business, life path, relationship. It's very clear, and it gives you clear directions, right, Amir? Right? It gives you clear directions about how to move forward. And then coming up in 2017, I'm going to be offering more classes about energy work. You know, a lot of basics people just need to, you know, improve their life. But, you know, the extension of basic energy work is healing. Start to do healing work. And beyond that, if you can do hands-on healing and energetic healing, it's only one step to doing clairvoyant work, which I think a lot of people would find interesting.
Exciting stuff. Well, I'd like to again thank you for being on the show, and I'd like to thank the audience for joining us throughout this time. And again, check out acquainted.com and Masaki Miyagawa's various services and materials that he has there. And check out potentnews.com. If you guys want to see more of this kind of material, it's more likely to happen if you guys donate. I got PayPal, Bitcoin. So is there any other closing statements you would like to give, Masaki?
Well, we are recording this, I think, middle of December. So I would say this: we have a personal biorhythm or personal year count, right? But there's a global year count. So 2016 calculates to 9, and the numbers go from 1 to 9. So this is the ending year. Okay, so you've seen a lot of stuff this year. It's like ending. Basically, the whole cycle that we were from Obama, the 2007 subprime crisis, it's all coming to a conclusion now, right? That was basically the whole Obama era, right? 2017 is a 1 year. So a lot of changes are happening, and they will continue to happen. And it's going to be a whole new phase. It's going to go for 10 years starting in 2017. So, you know, if you're interested in your year, you know, where you are in your cycle, you know, you can hit me up. We can do a numerology reading. But I would say we are in some exciting times. There's a lot of modalities, a lot of things out there that we can get into for healing, energetics, and so forth. And I just want to thank you, Amir, for, you know, having this talk. And there's a lot more to talk about, but we'll end it here for now.
All right, yeah, would love to have you on in the future. And yeah, thank you very much. And I guess that's it. Goodbye, everybody.